Yo, hey, this shit easy, nigga. Hey, all I'm talking about, nigga, I'm still out here trying to get it.
Contender Regime Boxing checking back in with y'all, man. What's going on? Hope everybody doing good, staying corona free. I had a topic, that I was just I was reading an article on ESPN, the boxing segment on ESPN, and they posted a few different things like, best division in boxing and most underrated fighter in boxing. And we're gonna talk about best division. We might talk about that on Friday. You know what I'm saying? We might talk about that because I got a few different thoughts on that. But as far as most underrated fighter in boxing right now, it's a few guys. It's a few guys that come to mind. It's a few guys that come to mind as far as the most underrated fighter in the game. And when I think about the word underrated, when it comes to boxing, I think about a guy that brings it every time, very strong-willed, very talented, very skilled, and they don't necessarily get the credit that they deserve. It could be a fighter that does get shine, but they don't get the shine that they actually should be getting. It could be a guy that a lot of people talking about, but they don't get dubbed as skilled or as good as, really they should be getting the credit for. The first person that comes to mind is Shawn Porter. Shawn Porter, to me, for a long time, has been very, very underrated. A lot of people look at his fighting style and they say he's sloppy. They say, he's not as skilled, but I've seen Shawn Porter show more and more. The more I see him in the ring, the more he steps up in competition, the more diverse his competition becomes, because he's not, he don't just look to fight one type of style. He's willing to mix it up with anybody. And that's one thing I love and respect about Shawn Porter. But, a lot of people talk about he's not as skilled as he really is because they see he got the rough, bulldoze type of style, very physically strong. He get in there and he make you fight his fight. Like 9 times out of 10, if you fight Shawn Porter, he gonna make you fight that type of fight. And there's really nothing you can do about it, but only thing that you can do is weather the storm. If you can weather the storm. Not many people will be successful against Shawn Porter, let alone look spectacular. But over the course of his career, he's been able to just peel back different layers of his game. And shout out to Kenny Porter, because I want to give Kenny Porter and Coach Larry Wade a lot of credit, because you can really tell that they work, especially Kenny Porter. I know Larry Wade been there I think he's been there for like 5 or 6 years, something like that. But Kenny Porter has really given Shawn Porter just a large depth of skill, knowledge, and wisdom in the game of boxing. And you can see the different layers every time he stepped in the ring. I really was impressed with Shawn Porter when he fought against Danny Garcia. To me, that was his best performance, just overall performance. I felt like his performance versus Danny Garcia it just showed me that he can do half and half. He showed me that he can give me the bulldozing and roughhousing style, which is very, very effective, but you got to use it in certain spots. He showed me that he can pick and choose when he want to use that. Then he also showed me that he can box and he can pick his shots. He can jump in and jump out. He can use his jab. He can get low and go to the body. He can, get up in your chest and where you can't really get your shots off and just smother your offense, and then be able to get his shit off, jump back out. I like the way he bounced on his toes in that fight. I like the way he moved. And then when Danny Garcia least expected it in that fight, he brought it to him. You know what I'm saying? Every time he brought it to him. And he roughed him up. And he made Danny Garcia uncomfortable. I felt like for him to have as much success as he possibly could have, he would have had to adapt that same game plan versus Earl Spence Jr., which he did, which he also looked spectacular versus Earl Spence Jr. as well in a classic fight of the year type of fight. And I felt like that was his best opportunity to beat a guy of the caliber of Earl Spence Jr. And he went in there and put on a hell of a performance. I feel like Shawn Porter don't really get the credit that he deserved, you know, for as skilled of a fighter that he is, the heart, his willingness to fight any and everybody. I feel like Shawn Porter is definitely, he might be the most underrated fighter in boxing. If not, he's definitely one of them. My next most underrated fighter in boxing is Jamel Charlo. The reason I say Jamel Charlo is because it's a lot of hate that goes towards Jamel Charlo. People say they don't like the fact that he's confident. They say he's arrogant, cocky. He talk too much when you got a whole lot of other fighters that act the same way. They don't say shit about them, but you know what I'm saying? They say he cocky and he arrogant. I call it passion. I love the way Jamel Charlo approaches the game of boxing. Every time I hear him open his mouth and talk about boxing, I can generally tell and get an honest feeling that he loves what he do. He loves training. He loves getting in the ring and fighting. He loves inflicting pain and punishment. You know, when I first started watching Jamel Charlo, he was working with Ronnie Shields. He was more of a boxer, you know, using his jab, working his angles, fighting from the outside. When he got with Derrick James, and the fact that he switched, even though he was winning, even though he was undefeated, he was winning his fights. He said, look, you know what? I know I can be better than this. I know I got different facets of my game that I can open up and unpack and present to the world, present to the sport of boxing. I know I can be better than this. He got with Derrick James and started to show different levels of his game, started to get more knockouts, started to assert himself more in the ring, use his supreme athleticism that he's just God-given athletic. The dude is, him and his brother Jamel Charlo, those guys are just gifted when it comes to athleticism. He just has so many natural abilities. He say, look, I'm going to get with Derrick James and I'm going to take full advantage of my natural gifts. And he started to use his athleticism more. He got a iron chin, just like Shawn Porter. And I think that's very important for any fighter, but he got an iron chin, you know, a lot of heart, a lot of passion towards the game. And I feel like Jamel Charlo is really a pound for pound caliber type of guy. I think Jamel Charlo can compete with the best anywhere between 154 and 160. I think those are his divisions, 154 and 160. Maybe he'll be at 160 within the next 3 or 4 years. But 154, I think that's like perfect for him. I think he's a natural 154 pounder. And I can see him fighting in that division for at least 2 or 3 more years. And I actually think he's the best fighter right now at 154 pounds, but he don't really get the credit that he deserves. They don't talk about Jamel Charlo as a possible pound for pound type of fighter. And, you know, with the win over Erickson Lubin, who I feel like Erickson Lubin is going to be great one day. You know, he also got a win over Tony Harrison, who was a hell of a boxer, who got a controversial and close decision victory over Jamel Charlo, which a lot of people felt like Jamel Charlo won that first fight. You know, I just feel like Jamel Charlo should be talked about as a pound for pound type of fighter, whether it's top 10, top 15. He is a pound for pound caliber talent, but he don't get the credit that he deserves. And I think that may come with, you know, getting more big names under his belt. You know what I'm saying? There's not a lot of guys that's lining up to fight Jamel Charlo. You know, and that's one thing you can't say about Jamel Charlo. He never ducked no smoke. He's willing to fight anybody. Right now, he want to get Jason Rosario in the ring, but we seen Jason Rosario and his team, they don't want to fight Jamel Charlo right now. Remember when Jamel Charlo was scheduled to fight Demetrius Andre. Demetrius Andre backed out of that fight. You know, and it's not to throw shade on nobody else, but this is just to point out the fact that Jamel Charlo, he wants to fight the best. And if you look at all of the characteristics that I just named off, from these two fighters, there's a lot of similarities. Maybe the only difference is the personality. Shawn Porter is a little bit more laid back, less talkative, less, braggadocious and all that, less flashy. Aside from them big ass ties he be wearing, them hoes flashy, you know what I'm saying, with the suits. And Jamel Charlo is a little bit, he's more of a, outspoken. He talk his shit, and that's cool. I think you need both of those type of personalities in the sport of boxing. It gives you diversity. It makes it more exciting. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, man, those are my two most underrated fighters in the sport of boxing. I got Shawn Porter and I got Jamel Charlo. You can mix either one, whichever one you wanted to go with. I think both of them have, a case for being the most underrated fighter in the game. So y'all let me know what y'all think down in the comments. Who is the most underrated fighter in boxing and why? Drop that down in the comments, man. Consider regime boxing. I'll holler at y'all boys, man.